So, with CM Punk no longer part of AEW and him at one point being a focal point for the Collision show on Saturday nights, it seems that AEW is trying to rectify that loss by basically focusing on the BCC, the Blackpool Combat Club, and mostly Bryan Danielson. But, excuse me, but is that enough? Is that enough? You see, apparently a lot of people that saw Collision this past Saturday and review shows like Collision and Dynamite and Rampage and SmackDown and Raw, for a living, like here on YouTube or on various podcasts and whatever. A lot of them, more specifically, JD from Off the Script and his co-reviewer, his collaborator, Heel Jesse, Chi-Town Mark, uh, they basically talked about this past Saturday's Collision and felt that essentially it was basically half Ring of Honor slash AEW Dark and half Rampage or something like that. Like basically the first half was essentially a more elaborate version of what you used to see on YouTube and what you would see on Honor Club with AEW Dark Elevation, and now Ring of Honor. And the second half felt more like a Rampage broadcast. And they have a right to their opinion. They do have a right to their opinion. And they basically felt like the second half that was more Rampage-like, but more of a higher quality Rampage, was the better part of the show. So the question is Collision long for this world? Is AEW Collision long for, its run on TNT without CM Punk? And that to me is a good question because, again, even though they are trying their best to rectify that matter, it seems that maybe, it may not help them in the long run. I mean, David Zaslav basically gave them this extra 2 hours, not only because they're invested in what AEW can bring, but mostly they were invested in that one individual that basically they knew could bring eyeballs onto the product even on a Saturday night, and that's CM Punk. Well, now Punk's no longer there. And because he's no longer there, they have to they basically have to deal with what Tony Khan and AEW gives them for the time being. Until they can, I guess, rebuild the dike, if you will, that was CM Punk. And rebuild it maybe with a better quality than what they had before, aka, Bryan Danielson and the Blackpool Combat Club and others. And look, I'm not going to say that Collision is heading for that downward spiral. I'm not. I'm not saying Collision is doomed to failure. I'm not saying Collision is going to turn out to be the new Thunder to Dynamite. Because let's not forget, when WCW Thunder debuted, it was going to be its own programming. It's going to have its own Pacific roster, and everything, along with the occasional appearances of the big stars that would show up on Nitro. Like on occasions you get Hogan, on occasions you get Sting, you get Savage and everything. But it was supposed to be Thunder, that is supposed to be, depending on who you believe, a show centered around a Pacific roster that was headlined by, Bret the Hitman Hart. Now, again, that depends on who you believe. However, when things didn't go that way and, they started losing certain talents and Bret Hart was out with injuries and stuff, the momentum that Collision had went down the toilet. Not Collision, but Thunder, I should say. You see, I'm talking about Collision. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. The momentum that Thunder had started to go down the window. I'm not saying it went down the window initially, but over time, you could tell that it was becoming a shell of what it was originally supposed to be. Now, true, in the later years of WCW, they tried to pick up the momentum under Russo's reign, and it seemed to work. I mean, the most memorable Thunder that they did, whether you liked it or not, was the May 3rd, 2000 Thunder, the one that had the no rules, New York rules plot to it, where basically there was no referees. Every match was essentially anything goes, a street fight, you know, basically crash course television at its finest or its worst, depending on how you look at it. But in between then and before, yeah, it kind of went through a slump. Now, is Collision probably going to go through something like that? Possibly. Possibly. But here's the thing. WCW was around for a long time, a lot longer than AEW, much longer than AEW. And basically, Nitro was around, several years, basically about 3.5 years before Thunder debuted. Remember, Thunder debuted at the beginning of 1998. Nitro at that time was going on 2.5 years. So essentially, well, not 3.5. So I got to correct myself there. It was 2.5 years, but still, same kind of time frame, but not really. And let's not also forget, Saturday night was also the prime show for WCW before Nitro came around. So basically, WCW, like I said, had been around for a while, had the prime A shows from Saturday night to Nitro and so on, before Thunder came around. And again, the idea was, just like with Collision and even SmackDown to an extent, was to give these shows their own separate rosters, but have Pacific superstars or wrestlers as the focal point. And that's what Collision was going to be for CM Punk and several other men and women of AEW. But now that he's not there, the question is, how do they kind of fix this? How do they rebuild? And basically CM Punk was the Bret Hart. And like I said, when Bret Hart went out with injuries or was dealing with personal issues or whatever, they had to rely on talent that they were originally meant to be seen only on Nitro, and that was it. But because Bret Hart wasn't around and Pacific other players they wanted to focus Nitro on weren't around, they essentially just said, okay, we're going to send you over to Thunder and help out there. And that's especially true when the ratings for Thunder, initially they were up, and everything, but then over time they dropped. So to get those ratings back up, they had to bring in those big names to not only fill in the gaps for the names and talents that were supposed to be focused on that weren't there due to injuries or personal reasons or whatever, but they also did it for ratings. They did it for the ratings, if you will, to get people to tune in and watch. And you have to wonder if Collision's heading down that path now as well, to where as they try to rebuild it, are they going to have to rely on celebrities? Like recently, they just brought in Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman had not been part of wrestling for who knows how long, and suddenly Tony Khan wants to bring him in. WBD wants to bring him in. Why? I'll tell you why. Because CM Punk is not there anymore, and they need to rebuild the dike. They need to find ways to get people's attention. And right now, it's a slow, very slow process. Because again, you focused all your time and effort on this show to be centered around one man and other Pacific talent, and now that one man is no longer around. And now you got to fill that void. Now, Bryan Danielson is a good start, but if what he said on Saturday is true, then, they're really going to have to start focusing on who's going to be the face of that show. Now, it seems that they want to focus on Ricky Starks, and that's great. That's a good start. He's young. He's got a lot of years in this business ahead of him. So it seems that they want to focus on Ricky Starks. And like I said, that's a good start and everything, but you got to do more. You have to have more talent to focus on. Miro and C.J. Perry, a.k.a. Lana, they seem to be a good, a good, I guess you could say, solid base to build a foundation on as well, for Collision. So that's a good start, along with Ricky Starks and the BCC, mostly Danielson. So there are some good pieces, here and there that they can interlock together to rebuild Collision into what they originally planned it to be when it was originally focused on Punk. You know, so they got the bits and pieces there. All it is now is up to Tony Khan and his team, creative teams and management teams alike, to come together and make this a reality. It's up to them now, because if they don't try to fix this, if they don't try to rebuild it to the point that basically people are going to want to tune in again on Saturday nights, and see it as must-watch television, then I'm sorry to say, I don't think Collision's going to have a future. I mean, let's be honest. Thunder, depending on how you feel about it, had a future, no matter how you look at it. It had a future. Buyout, the buyout be damned and everything. It had a future. It was going to stay on. It still had enough ratings to where people would tune in and watch on Thursday nights or Wednesday nights, whenever it was. So it still had a future. And yes, it came in around the same time frame, that, Collision came in for AEW, 2.5 years, 3 years into the company's existence. But now the question is, will Collision have a future if AEW, mostly Tony Khan and his management team, creative and everything, don't come up with a solution, don't have a blueprint, to go by, and basically use that blueprint to be like, okay, we're going to focus on this person, we're going to focus on that person, we're going to focus on this one and that one, and then go from there. If they don't have one, they're pretty much screwed. Again, like I said, you got several talents that it looks like you're going to focus on. Ricky Starks, Big Bill, a.k.a. Big Cass from WWE. Miro and C.J. Perry. Jade is back. Jade Cargill is back. Chris Statlander. You have the talent. You just got to now interlock them into a plan, into a focused plan to help rebuild this show back to what it was originally when you had Punk on it. And Danielson being, along with the BCC, being, that lead figurehead and that lead figurehead group, again, that's a good start as well. But it's up to them in the long run. It's up to them. It's not up to me. It's not up to me. It's not up to the people at Warner Bros. Discovery. It's up to Tony Khan. It's up to his creative team. It's up to his management team. It's up to those that, he basically puts himself around to get the job done, to get this rebuilt. Because if not, just like JD and Jesse said on Saturday night, people are going to view this as just an extension of Rampage in the second hour, and basically a more new and improved modern day version, easy for me to say, basically a more new and improved, updated, more modernized AEW Dark and AEW Dark Evolution, and an extension of Ring of Honor from Honor Club. That's all they're going to see it as. So they need to really get the crap together and help Collision not basically fall into obscurity, like people feel it might do without Punk. But give me your thoughts. What do you think is Collision's future? Let me know down below in the comments, as well as in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video, and until next time, guys, I am out. Y'all have a good day.